Hi, it's Ann Lowe with the Lowdown on Cancer. And, just a little bit of background. In August, we've spent time speaking with experts, and we found that, access to care isn't necessarily about access to insurance, it's access to the right care at the right time in the right place. We've also had an incredible opportunity to speak with a doctor who, prior to COVID, didn't utilize telemedicine in his practice and what a difference that has made in his practice and some of the gaps that he's seeing. And today I'm very, very excited to introduce James Bates. James is a CEO of a healthcare automation company. And if you don't mind, James, why don't you share a little bit of your backstory so we kind of know who we're talking with today?
Sure. I appreciate you having me with you today, Anne. I've been in the high technology field for 25 years. And prior to AdviNow Medical, I actually ran a billion-dollar business in self-driving vehicle technology. So we made all of the sensors, the systems that give the car the ability to sense its surroundings and then be able to make decisions. When we sold that company in December of 2015, I looked at what to do next. And healthcare just attracted me. But initially, I just started looking at clinics, clinical operations. And when I started thinking about looking at really the workflow, how manual everything was, I was really surprised to see that from a business perspective, actually primary care, which is one of the most critical aspects for patient health from a longitudinal standpoint, was really not a great business. In fact, doctors were continually avoiding primary care because they don't make money and they can't even pay back their student loans for medical school. So once I noticed that, I thought, well, what if we take all the same technology that's in a self-driving vehicle and that automates around a driver and we automate around the doctor? Will that actually accomplish our goal? Well, what we've seen over the past couple of years since we've delivered that product to market is that doctors that use the AdviNow platform actually see more patients per day, 2 to 3 times more patients per day. And the patients that they see, they get to spend more time with and be able to resolve their issues. What AdviNow Medical does is it automates away the 2/3 of their time that's spent on clerical work. And eliminating that clerical work, that is what the value of healthcare automation brings.
Oh, that's very, very interesting. I spent 20 years in healthcare, and I could say the bulk of my time was spent in filling out paperwork and taking history and physicals. So, I had mentioned earlier, we had the opportunity to interview Dr. Margaret Kierkegaard. And again, she was talking about it's not always about having health insurance. It's about the right care in the right place at the right time. And one of the examples he gives is some people use the emergency room as their primary care physician. And it just is such a waste of resources when you know that you probably have a strep throat, that you're going to utilize emergency room resources that could be better utilized with another type of patient. And how would AdviNow fall into that right place, right time kind of scenario?
Absolutely. I mean, the amazing thing about access to healthcare is it's actually declines dramatically over the past 20 years. In fact, less than 50% of adults in the United States have a primary care physician. So what that means is that they are using the emergency room, they are using the urgent care center as their primary care. Well, the problem with that is that not only is it tremendously more expensive, but it is actually making every visit to the doctor episodic. It means they just care about that one visit. Maybe it's just that strep throat. The beauty of AdviNow Medical is that we solve the fundamental root cause of that declining primary care access over the past 20 years. And that's the fact that the doctors are overburdened with that documentation. So they have a limited number of patients today. In fact, we would need to double the number of primary care physicians in the United States if we were going to give every single person access to healthcare. So what AdviNow Medical does is it actually allows that same doctor to see 2 to 3 times more patients per day. And because of that, we solve that healthcare access. So if for a patient who has strep throat today, if all they have to do is go to their doctor's office, and if they use the AdviNow Medical platform, they click on a link, and artificial intelligence will engage with that patient. In fact, it will be basically the same patient interview the doctor is doing, but you're doing it on the comfort of your sofa at your home. We go through that whole visit, and once that visit is done, the AI has finished the interview, it will determine what is the best point of care for that patient. It may be to send them into the doctor and see them. However, now when they go in to see the doctor already knows all of the issues about them. Thus, it's extremely efficient and, more importantly, effective with better outcomes. And when the patients don't even need to see the doctor, if they don't need medical labs or they don't need medical measurements, then they could actually see the doctor at home, which so many people have gotten used to since COVID-19 hit with telemedicine. Telemedicine is now integrated into the healthcare system, but AdviNow Medical makes it easy. Now it's not the doctor asking all the questions, remembering to get your payment, doing all of the crazy stuff that basically people have been doing over Zoom calls lately. And it integrates it into a full end-to-end automated platform that allows efficient medical visits, either over telemedicine or in the doctor's office.
This sounds very interesting. Is it already being utilized?
We've been integrated into 18 clinics so far. And in fact, in September, we have another 60 clinics that go live. So we're in the middle of a very busy period, but it's a great period for us.
That's awesome. So I interviewed Dr. Michael Manning, and I'm just going to read his quote. You know, he's an allergy and immunology specialist. And to quote him, "I couldn't be a surgeon just because, though I like doing stuff with my hands, I'd rather just sit and talk to somebody." And then he also added, "Electronic records is great because I have my whole office with me. Talk about something I do hate. I do hate it's added a lot of extra time for me, and it's not very personal. And that's what I don't like about electronic records." It sounds to me like AdviNow addresses a lot of that. In the places where you're already utilizing it, what kind of feedback are you getting from the doctors about its use?
Well, Dr. Manning has an incredible point. I mean, it's awesome that all of a sudden you have access to all of the patient records of that patient up until this time. It allows you to strategize to improve the healthcare of that patient. At the same time, doctors need to enter all of that information. So I hear it by my physician friends, it's called pillow time, where they get home at the end of the day after maybe a 12-hour day in the emergency room or 12-hour day in the clinic. They get home and then they have to finish the medical records before they go to bed. So they sit on their bed and type into their laptop such that they don't forget, because the liability is so huge on the doctors if they get it wrong or they do forget something that's critical to patient care. So that burden is really just a huge value for the physician and for the patient. Now, because an AI is actually scribing all of those notes, the doctor gets to spend real time with the patient without worrying about, hey, did I get this into the medical record? It's already in the medical record. They're just reviewing it with the patient. And maybe they need to add new information the patient may deliver, but the fundamental purposes for diagnosis are already there. So the patients, though, when they get to use the system, we've heard have 94% patient satisfaction. The 94% patient satisfaction comes from the fact that now they know the doctor has all of the symptoms that they believe the doctor needs to know about in order to diagnose them. And one of the biggest complaints is my doctor didn't spend enough time with me. Well, there's really two root causes with the doctor not wanting to spend enough time with me. The number one is, hey, I've been waiting in the waiting room for an hour, so that doctor owes me time, right? I've given my time, they better give their time. The second piece of it, and more valuable complaint, is the doctor walked in the room, asked me two questions, and walked out, and I got a nurse telling me what my prescription was. That's not treatment. What the doctor gets to do with AdviNow Medical is review the predictions of the illness and be able to relay them to the patient. And that is the true value of the system.
That's incredible. So how does a patient know how to find this kind of AdviNow treatment?
I'm sorry, Ann, say that one more time.
Yeah, how does a patient find a clinic or a physician that's using the AdviNow technology?
So today, AdviNow does not sell directly to patients. We sell into doctors' offices that then adopt our platform. So because of that, it's hard for a patient to search out a place with AdviNow. We are working on that, and we're putting together a patient-facing portal that would actually guide them to locations that use our platform. We are expecting that to actually be ready in Q1 of next year.
Oh, very nice. That's awesome. What is the difference between AdviNow and telehealth?
Sure. I mean, telehealth is being such widely adopted at the moment. Many people get confused about this exact fact. I mean, telehealth is anytime a doctor talks with a patient and they're not face-to-face. So that means it can be a phone call, it can be a video call, it can be anything. It's a very broad stroke. And there's companies like Teladoc that, right now their valuations are through the roof because of COVID, and people are looking at that and thinking, oh, that's very futuristic. Well, actually, we've all been using FaceTime for a very long time, right? I mean, the idea of a Skype call or a FaceTime call, it's 20 years old. So what we really need is not the fact that it's telehealth. What we really need is artificial intelligence ingrained into the medical visit that will optimize the use of telehealth. And that's where AdviNow is different.
That's awesome. So are you doing anything to address the missing components of telehealth?
Absolutely. So AdviNow actually has an augmented reality platform that will enable patients at their home to take medical measurements with physician level accuracy. That means you could have a heart exam or a lung exam or an ear exam or a throat exam, things that you would think, hey, I must have a doctor on the other end of that stethoscope. Well, our augmented reality platform actually overlays on the patient the exact right location to put the device. We then look at the feed from that device, whether it's audio or video, and make sure that it's what the doctor would expect. And we take an audit photo of the patient actually taking that measurement, such that the doctor can examine and confirm that, yes, the artificial intelligence and augmented reality system got it right, and this is the perfect measurement I need to be able to make a diagnosis. The biggest problem with telehealth is that it is not objective. You can't have a doctor get on the other end of the phone, and we'll just use strep throat as an example. Me telling you that I feel hot and my throat hurts and then going, into the camera. Yeah, that's not a real examination. Doctors are smart guys. So they're pretty good guessers, right? So again, a telehealth exam isn't useless, but at the same time, it's not an objective examination. AdviNow Medical closes that gap. We provide not only the capability to take those medically exact measurements at home. But then if needed, if a patient needs a lab or a blood draw or whatever it may be, we will guide them to those locations to take the measurements before they spend the time with the doctor, such that when they do actually meet the provider, either in person or over a telemedicine, that doctor has all they need to be able to cure the patient as effectively and as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, I can see where that would be a huge benefit. I've actually had a couple of telemedicine visits since COVID, and I would have to say the first 5 to 7 minutes of a 15-minute window was spent them reviewing my medication. Oh, was I still using this? Was I not? And there were a lot of things.
What a waste of their time.
What a waste of my time and my health insurance company's money. I can see it would be a great advantage to have that all in front of them before they ever talk to me. So that's awesome. What do you think is the future of artificial intelligence in the healthcare business, healthcare industry?
I think, a lot of people have different views of AI and they imagine, the Terminator end of the world type of things. The reality, what AI is going to do immediately in healthcare is enable efficiency that will allow every person in the world to have access to care. And when you have that access to care, that's when you prevent serious illnesses. If you can catch cancer in stage 1 and not stage 4, the recovery rate is not even in the same stratosphere. So for every patient to have that access to diagnosis, you have to make doctors super efficient. I like to call the doctors that use our platform super doctors. And their superpower is the efficiency that they have. And that is delivered by artificial intelligence. So what does AI do for the medical industry? That's what it does today. That is what it can do today. What does it do in the future? Someday I could imagine that you don't even need to see a doctor for something as simple as strep throat or a urinary tract infection. That's years away, but I do imagine that world eventually. Today, our goal is just to make the doctor a super doctor, deliver them that superpower.
Yeah, you brought up something about this being access to care for everyone. Now, having spoken to Dr. Kierkegaard earlier in the month, she talked about the fact that 10% of the population of the United States doesn't have access to care. How would this address that?
So it's interesting when you look at people who don't have access to care. They fall underneath really 3 different categories. One is they live so far away that access to care is an hour or 2-hour drive. So you're looking at the rural communities. The second is that they make too much money, so they don't qualify for Medicaid, but they make too little money to be able to afford $1,500 a month to buy health insurance. And there's a segment of the population that falls into that category. And then the third category are people who choose not to have access to care. And they just don't want to see the doctor. It's inconvenient for whatever reason. The beautiful thing about AdviNow Medical is we actually solve all of those issues. If you're in a remote location and you don't have access to care, with $500 kit that you can buy online, you now have all the medical measurement devices that you need to be able to treat for 90% of the illness issues that you may come across. Then, if you are a person who can't afford care, because the doctors are now so more efficient, the cost to that care goes down. And I look at people like Walmart. That's their vision. A $20 physician visit. Now it's not about paying hundreds of dollars standing in line. It's about going to your Walmart and using it. And systems like AdviNow Medical are what enable that $20 physician visit to become a reality. Then for the people that basically it's just too annoying for them, right? They just don't have access to care because they're just ignoring it. It's all about making it simple, making it easy. And when you think about telemedicine, almost everyone thinks of what they call synchronous telemedicine. That means real time talking to a human on the other side. The value of AdviNow Medical is now asynchronous telemedicine becomes the norm. So what does that mean? That means that it's like a text message or an email that you're sending back and forth. Because AdviNow Medical has collected every question, every measurement, every lab that a doctor would need to do a diagnosis, that means that a real life call with the doctor may not even be necessary. So for people that think it's just too annoying to get that lump looked at in my neck, you know, this can now take care of it. They don't need to talk to anyone real time, and they just get a response from their doctor with a diagnose, from any doctor that they choose with a diagnosis and treatment suggestion. And then it's up to them on whether to treat themselves or not.
Right. Wow, this is very exciting because it certainly sounds like it addresses a lot of different things. You know, you did say that it lowers cost. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. You know, as we move forward in a value-based care world, and when I say value-based care, I mean that doctors are compensated by keeping the patient healthy, not by treating them when they're sick. And in our healthcare system, I hate to use the word perverse because that's not a very nice word. But ultimately, what's happening is that the doctors make more money the sicker you are and the more surgeries you get. Now, they're utilizing their skills, so that seems normal. It's a fee for service. It's a pay for what you get. However, it can lead to episodic care. So now what Medicare is doing with Medicare Advantage and Medicaid is doing in many states, as well as United Healthcare and CVS Aetna, they are actually creating plans where the doctors are compensated by keeping the patient healthy. What that means is that primary care is free. And you can talk to your doctor as many times as you want. There is no copay, there is no thing, but it has to be done through a platform like AdviNow's. And that is really when we see healthcare being free for all. And I see a future where this type of care is available and free for everyone, and doctors are only charging for treatments, they're not charging for diagnosis. That is the future of AI augmentation in healthcare.
I have to be honest with you, I'm sitting here with goosebumps because that is so amazing to consider, and I can actually see it. I mean, here in Arizona, we have a truck company that just signed a huge contract to have self-driving diesel trucks, well, not diesel trucks, but self-driving semis, you know, transporting goods all across the country. So this only seems to make sense. So you had mentioned that you have some other clinics that are possibly thinking about starting with this. Can you say a little bit more about that?
You know, our next chain is actually going through a very revolutionary upgrade to their platform. They have about 60 locations, and they are converting everything over to AdviNow Medical to help them treat COVID patients effectively. So, you know, I can't disclose it until they actually go live, but it's in a area that's been really hard hit by COVID, and they're really worried about the flu season on combining COVID together with the traditional flu. And without having an AI front end to their clinics, they don't know how they can handle it. And so this is an exciting time for us because we are ramping so quickly. But at the same time, it's really bringing value back to the patient to allow them to be treated when they need to be treated.
Yeah, again, going back to that right place, right time, you know, right care. And as I've looked into AdviNow, one of my first thoughts, because I've spoken with a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses, a lot of people that are on the front line of COVID, and one of the things that they all say is that there are a huge number of patients that are still in the hospital that could easily be monitored at home if there was an effective way to do it. And this just sounds like such a practical answer to that.
Absolutely. The reality is that hospital beds in general are just to watch the patient unless they get bad, and then to be able to respond quickly. Well, if you were in a condition where the response time could be 10 to 20 minutes, then any of those patients could be home. And COVID actually falls into that category. If the patient's about to have some type of serious lung event before they actually do. So those critical patients wouldn't stay there. But you need to be able to react if they do have some type of episode, or if they're trying to get worse, or if they're starting to get worse. Those are the type of patients that can be brought home.
Awesome. Now, I know you touched on it a little bit briefly, but because this is, all about cancer, how do you see this technology benefiting people that haven't been diagnosed with cancer, people that are cancer patients, and cancer survivors?
Yeah, I mean, all three of those categories actually are tremendously benefited. Let's start with cancer survivors. Especially in times of COVID, it's dangerous out there. I mean, ultimately, a compromised immune system, if you've been going through radiation therapy, if you catch COVID, you're probably going to die. And so that unfortunate reality is what cancer survivors are living with today. And so a technology like ours enables those patients to actually be triaged and sent to the exact right location that will keep them safe for the treatment that they need. And that all starts at the comfort of their home, where they are sheltering. For patients who haven't been diagnosed with cancer, those patients, the idea of having access now to be able to talk with somebody with a short lead time is everything. I mean, I've heard story after story about patients who, they just feel a little groggy and it's kind of getting worse. So they set up a time with their primary care physician. The earliest appointment is 2 months away. And so they wait the 2 months. And by the time they actually get in to see their provider, they're already stage 3. And that could have been solved if they could have been able to see them earlier. So if their physician uses AdviNow Medical, that is all triaged up front and categorized such that that patient would absolutely not be waiting those 2 months. So those values are apparent. Now for the person who is struggling going through cancer treatment themselves, a big part of this is treating the whole patient as you're going through the therapies that you may go through. Really, when you think about how cancer treatment is done, I mean, you're actually destroying the body to save it. And that causes a tremendous amount of complications with many other bodily systems. And going back and forth with your oncologist and your primary care doctor and managing the whole patient, both from a behavioral health standpoint as well as all of the other bodily systems, it's a big deal. And you need to be able to have that access and the AI assist that you can actually get help from your home instead of going in and waiting in that waiting room. AdviNow Medical does that. In fact, we have been working with a very large oncology system here in Arizona that wants to use us for their clinical trials to assure that every single patient is actually following the trial protocols exactly so that they could use them to get FDA approval. They said roughly half of the patients don't follow the protocols, so their results can't even be used. AdviNow Medical also helps solve that problem.
That's awesome. So I actually in the practice that I used to work in, I was in charge of all the clinical trials. And you'd have a patient come in and there were easily 40, 50, 60 pages of documentation because you're trying to find out side effects and all these different things. And if you missed one box, that data got thrown out. And so I can see where this would be huge for any kind of clinical trial because it's very easy to have human error in that situation. So
exactly.
A little message that went up, like when you're filling in your password and stuff and missed one, it automatically takes you back there. So I can see that would be very beneficial, and that's very exciting. So we talked a lot about a lot of things, and I'm very intrigued about what you have. I think it sounds very exciting. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you'd like to share?
Just AdviNow's vision is to democratize healthcare for everybody. This is just the first step. Full automation for all specialties. We're starting with primary care and urgent care just because access is everything for step one. But as we go through each of the specialties, we can see how the medical system's inefficiency is hurting people. And this is a way to solve it. That is our vision.
Well, that is fantastic. I'm very excited to share this with our community. This is why we exist in the Cancer Fund and the Lowdown on Cancer, is to share innovations like this that, quite honestly, the bulk of the population has no idea is being created, and in some instances already in place, with an opportunity for it to grow even more. So I'm very excited to share this with our community. Thank you so much for your time, and I really look forward to following and seeing what's next for AdviNow.
Thank you very much, Ann. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you for watching the Lowdown on Cancer presented by the Cancer Fund. To learn more about what's coming in future episodes, visit us at www.cancerfund.com. While you're there, check out past episodes and be sure to click Join Us to become a member of the Cancer Fund community. As a member of the community, you'll receive early access to new interviews as well as other announcements. Make sure to connect to all of our social media channels so you don't miss a thing. In addition to getting early access to new episodes of the Lowdown on Cancer, Cancer Fund members play a critical role in driving cancer innovation forward so that one day we can more than hope. We can actually beat cancer. Thank you for joining us on this journey.